How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another Marvel Snap Zone video. We have the new tier list for, this is Wednesday, October 18th. I'm filming this on Saturday morning though, so a little bit late to this video, but I wanted to break down the tier list for Conquest and what's kind of happened in the meta and what I see happening and things like that. So this week there are 6 decks in tier 1 and tier 2. Last week there were 8. There's Thanos Control has dropped down to tier 3. Iron Patriot dropped down to tier 3. Evolved Doomwave is completely gone off the list, and Sera Control is new back on the list. So let's go through the list really quick. The Silent Performers, High Evolutionary apparently is posting really good numbers that would land it in like tier 2, but there just wasn't enough of a sample size to be put there. So I'd probably recommend playing High Evolutionary. It's really effective against Loki decks, where if they copy your hand or they copy cards in your deck, they don't get the power, and so they're just vanilla cards. So it works pretty good against those decks. And then there's a bounce list deck, kind of looks like a Hitmonkey type of a deck. And then on reveal, I did want to show this one really quick. This just reminds me of like early Marvel Snap from like a year ago, where people were complaining that Wong was too powerful and it was OP and it needed to get nerfed. Stuff with White Tiger and Odin, the things you can do is just fun, and I'm happy to see that it's posting good numbers again, because I used to love decks like this. So worth checking out if you want to give that a shot. Now's the time to do it. And then we look at tier 1. We have Move, obviously at the top of the list. It hasn't moved. And then we have Shuri Sauron, followed by Sera Control for tier 1. And then Loki Collector, Thor Miracle, and Deadpool Destroy for tier 2. Deadpool Destroy has come up from tier 3. I've been having a blast with Deadpool Destroy. I'm happy to see that it's performing really well, mostly because of the lack of armor in the meta. It lets this deck kind of breathe and do its thing. I think the only deck that's running armor is Shuri Sauron. And then all the tier 3 decks. Only notable one here that we haven't seen really is the Guardians Lockdown list. We talked about it in the ranked tier list earlier this week. A lot of creators have been talking about it. Fairly popular, but here it is. So if you want to check out those lists, if you want to check out tier 3 or the Silent Performers, make sure you check out the full article. I'll post the link in the description. But for the purposes of the video, we're going to look at tier 1 and tier 2. Overall, Elsa is becoming, or is, the #1 card to have in Marvel Snap. Unfortunately, it's a season pass card, so you have to pay for it. But if you're ever going to buy a season pass, this is the one to do it. She is in 4 of the 6 decks that we're going to talk about today. After Alioth getting nerfed, she's just become the best card. Before the Alioth nerf, I'd probably say Alioth was the best card. I still think Alioth is really good, especially in Conquest. It's very popular. He's just kind of an auto win if you can set it up properly. Definitely get the season pass if you don't have it, so you don't have to wait and spend tokens. But let's skim through the deck lists. Not much has changed in terms of the lists themselves. The main information I wanted to give you are the decks that have dropped down, the popularity of Elsa. Oh, lastly, the reactive cards have kind of come back into the meta. Cards like Shang-Chi and Shadow King, those are the 2 main ones that have been appearing more often. Shang-Chi I've been seeing a lot, and then Enchantress and Rogue have been popping in here and there. Not as popular, but there was no reactive cards for a couple weeks there, and I'm happy to see them come back. I've been having a lot of success with Shang-Chi, so it's nice to see them coming back into the meta and being useful again. But let's talk about the deck list. So Move, this isn't the same list that was on Ladder. It's very close. I think the one that was on Ladder was closer to the second Move list, where it ran Captain Marvel instead of Alioth. Has a little bit of a different package where it has Miles Morales and Kitty Pryde instead of Mobius and Doctor Doom. But I think this Alioth list is better in Conquest. I think Alioth is really strong in Conquest. And there's really not much to say here. We've seen it before. An Elsa Move list. Move as an archetype, it seems like it's finding that core list that it really loves and that really works well. Still at the top, very consistent, puts out a lot of power. Elsa Move, I think, is the one that I've been seeing more often, with Kitty being able to just keep bouncing into that Angela Elsa lane. You stack that value on one card, and it feels easier to set up because Kitty is a one cost, you're not playing the higher end cards to try to get that last buff slot. So you're able to play Kitty and play another card in other lanes while you're cycling through there. But next up is Shuri Sauron. It's one of the few decks that are running armor. This list does not run Enchantress. Some lists had Enchantress in there. Again, not much to talk about here. Shuri has just been a very solid list. Shuri Kitty was performing as good as this list in ladder, but in Conquest, it's just not performing as well. Alioth is more popular in Conquest, and I think Shuri Kitty suffers a little bit more from Alioth. Whereas this list, you can kind of use the Shuri to buff vision, you can move the vision, you can play your Taskmaster in your armor lane, and it just allows you to play around Alioth a little bit. Also, I think this list is better at getting your opponent to retreat early, and in Conquest, that's not a bad thing. So you're able to snap early, maybe your opponent will retreat because they can see the turn 6 that you're about to have, and it scares opponents away a little bit easier. So I think that's why it's a little bit more successful in Conquest. But Shuri. Next up, Sera Control. I'm happy Sera Control is back on these lists. I talked about it in the last video for ladder. I've always been a big fan of Sera, the plays that she can open up, the things that she can do and allow you to do. Again, we can see Shadow King and Shang-Chi in these decks, some reactive cards. Shadow King's unbelievable against move, and if you're seeing a lot of move, it's just fantastic. It literally can just win an entire lane on turn 6 on its own from what would be a 1-drop if you have Sera. I think the only thing that this deck runs into that's a problem is I feel like there's a lot of Mobiuses being thrown around. There's less now than there was before, but still a lot, and that's why Doomwave is actually not able to make this list because of Mobius. But overall, just a solid deck. I'm happy that Sera Control is back here, and again, give it a shot before it falls out again. I don't think it's going to be here for very long. I think the other decks are stronger. I think they do Elsa things better. I think like maybe Bounce does Hitmonkey things better. I think other decks just do things better. This deck is just more able to do a lot of different things. But again, very reliant on Sera. So if Mobius comes back, I think it's going to drop off pretty quickly. Already in tier 2, Loki Collector. We've seen Loki Collector. It has been around. It's a lot of top creators are saying, or top players are saying that Loki Collector is the best deck in the game. I'm not convinced that it is. I think that it struggles a bit. I don't know. I played some with it. I understand that it's good. It feels very telegraphed. So maybe I just don't think it's good because I know when I'm going to lose the deck, or after they play Loki, I know what answers they have or can have. And so it feels predictable, and it feels like it's easy to retreat against and mitigate losses. And then it seems very reliant on getting that collector into Loki to get a lot of power out there, especially when you have Mobius out. So in tier 2 right now, I do think it's I don't mean to make it sound like this deck is bad. I think it is good. I think it belongs maybe bottom of tier 1, top of tier 2, about where it is. But again, not much changing here. It's Loki Collector. Next up is Thor Miracle, another Elsa deck. It runs 2 0-drops, and then you get the 0-drops from Thor. So your ability to fill up lanes with 4 Elsa is really good. Your ability to drop a bunch of cards, I mean a lot of cards on turn 6 to get a big Hitmonkey to buff up Bishop, just really good. Again, a reactive card here with Shadow King. You're looking to get as many low drops as possible to dump on the last turn. I've seen versions that run Sera, but again, with Mobius, I don't think it's necessary. Also, with all the 0-drops, Sera doesn't do too much, so probably good to exclude it from the list. This deck is doing well because Wave is no longer in the meta. Obviously, you have Mobius in case you do run into a wave. You can kind of counter it, but if Wave comes back, it's going to make this deck struggle a little bit more. Also, I would consider putting in an armor somewhere, maybe for Mobius, possibly Luke Cage. I think Luke Cage is necessary to include though. But if you can slot in an armor somewhere to try to counter the Elias you're gonna run. Have I been saying Alioth this entire video? Eliath? Whatever, you guys know what I'm talking about. To counter some Eliath decks. Eliath is a big problem for this deck because again, you're looking to dump a bunch of cards on turn 6. And if they have priority because you haven't played a bunch of cards and they just delete everything you play in a lane, it's a real big problem for this deck. So armor is a consideration as an inclusion. I think this is just one of the more fun creative decks that have been around, that have come about in the last few weeks. I don't think we saw anything like it before, so it's really fun to see. Elsa is creating these opportunities for these oddball flood the board decks to come about, and it's fun. However, I do think Elsa is a little bit too strong. I wouldn't be surprised if they nerf her down to like +2 power or something instead of the +3. I don't know. We'll see. They seem to like to play around with the actual power of the card first, so maybe they make her a 2/1, but I don't think that's nearly enough. Anyways, Thor Miracle. And then lastly on our list is Deadpool Destroy. If you haven't tried this, now is really the time to do it. The lack of armors in the meta is just fantastic. The Shang-Chi is starting to come back, so those are a little bit annoying to run into when you get a good Venom off. But it is a fantastic deck. With the lack of armors, you get to do what you want to do. Nothing is really stopping you from doing it. And now is just a great time to play it. The version that I was playing had Taskmaster in there. I'm trying to figure out what I had swapped out for Taskmaster. I think maybe Chavez. I had Taskmaster in there so that if you can get that big Deadpool, you can play Deadpool and copy it with Taskmaster on the last turn. This made it into tier 2 from tier 3. It's been sitting at tier 3 for a really long time. And again, the absence of armor has just let it kind of do its thing. And then we have the tier 3 decks. Phoenix Force, we've seen this in the past. Thanos Control. I've been playing Thanos Control on ladder, and I've gone from rank 3,500 to I think 1,100 with it. And so Thanos Control right now is my favorite deck in the game. Iron Patriot, we've seen it before. Guardians Lockdown, a lot of creators were talking about this last week, in the last couple weeks. I played a version of this a few months ago, and I don't know, it's fun lockdown deck. I'm a big fan of lockdown decks, so I played a similar one to this, but I like Professor X in my lockdown list, and I like Daredevil in there, so a bit different, but same general idea. And then Hella Tribunal. So this tier list this week, it feels like the meta is settling. It feels like Elsa is kind of shining as the best card in the game. I think it's going to be a next target for nerfs or something in the future. I think it's too strong. It's too prevalent in the meta. And obviously with tier lists like this, and same with the ranked tier list, in this one, 4 of the top 6 decks is absurd for a card to be in. And not just a card. I know that back in the day, like Sunspot and Nebula, they were in a lot of decks just because they were very strong for their card slot. But they were very much filler cards, or very much like, hey, we just need a strong card in the slot. We're going to put them in the slot, but all the decks are built around other things. Right now, it feels like Elsa is the build around card. That's what people are building around. And unless you're building around Elsa, your deck is just not performing as well. So curious to see what they're going to do there. I'm excited for next week. I'm sorry this video was a little bit late. It's Saturday right now. Article came out on Wednesday. Make sure you check out the full article. Den has guides that are just fantastic guides, and you can copy all the deck list codes and things. Just easier to import it. Check out the full article. I do a video for the ranked ladder and the conquest ladder every week. So if you're not subscribed to Marvel Snap Zone, consider subscribing. I also have my own YouTube channel, so go check me out over there. The link will be in the description. And as usual, if you love all things Marvel Snap, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the bell. I'll see you in the next one.